Over the last couple of years, as we've explored the growth of the electric vehicle market, many of you have said, well, you're going to wait. You're waiting for a Corolla-sized hatchback that's fully electric with a decent range, but is crucially priced from under $40,000. Well, I'm here to tell you that that time has arrived. This is the MG4, a Corolla-sized, fully electric hatchback with decent range, and crucially, a price that starts from under $40,000. Now, this is our first look at the MG4 on local soil. So we've gone through the car from top to tail, and we'll give you a very detailed look at what may very well be your first EV. The MG4 is the first ground-up electric car from MG and is the brand's first all-new model since the HS SUV arrived in early 2020. While the headline act is the price-leading 51 kilowatt-hour MG4 Excite, which has an impressively sharp sticker of $38,990 before on-road costs, there are actually 4 variants of the electric hatchback set to launch. Buyers have a choice of 51, 64 and 77 kilowatt-hour batteries and either Excite or upscale Essence trim. Prices range from $38,990 for the entry-level Excite 51 and rise to $55,990 for the 77 kilowatt-hour Essence. Note that the 51 kilowatt-hour battery is only available in the Excite trim grade, and it is the car that we're looking at today. There's a single electric motor driving the rear wheels that offers 125 kilowatts and 250 newton meter output, with the 51 kilowatt-hour battery providing a 350 kilometer claimed range. The MG4 is capable of charging up to 88 kilowatt DC, and it supports vehicle-to-load power output as well. Despite being the entry-level model, the MG451 scores plenty of goodies, including LED head and tail lamps, basic telemetry services through the MG iSmart app, and a suite of driver assistance and safety technology. Please also be aware that the day after we filmed this, BYD announced that the new Dolphin EV would undercut the MG4's price by $100, making it the most affordable EV on the market. But by the time this publishes, things may change again, so just take any of my most affordable statements with a grain of salt. Well, let's get to know the MG4 a little bit better, but before we go on, I've got 2 things I need to cover off. First of all, this is a pre-production UK market car. Now, for all intents and purposes, it's basically the same as the car that we are going to get here later this year, but it's not. So there may be a few little differences. We don't know exactly what they'll be at this stage, but I just need to call that one out. The second part is, I am referring to this as an electric Corolla, and that is purely for context. It's not a Corolla, it's not a Toyota, but in the same way that I'll use, say, a Hilux as a benchmark for a ute, I'm using a Corolla as a benchmark for a small car, because that helps, I guess, most of you understand where this sort of fits in context. So, keeping that train going, overall size, it's a little bit shorter than a Corolla or a Hyundai i30, but it's a bit longer between the wheels. And that's some of the benefits that being a ground-up electric platform can offer you. You can put more space inside the cabin because the wheels can extend a little bit further on. Well, style-wise, it's a pretty cool little car. Now, I will admit the grey is probably not showing it off as best it could be, but it is a smart, modern, and rather handsome little hatchback. There are some kind of cool elements. You've got LED lighting front and rear. It's got a very identifiable signature. It's a little bit of fun. You've got these weird carbon fibre look nodules across the car. They don't save weight, they don't sort of help aerodynamics, they're just kind of there, but it makes it interesting. I really like the kind of indented bonnet. That's a bit of a shout out to the M4CS that you already have at home. Generally speaking though, and I guess the way to look at it, we see a lot of electric cars really leaning into the whole let's be electric and let's be different sort of thing, whereas the MG4 is kind of embracing itself as being the electric Corolla that we've all been waiting for. Now, models further up from the 51 in the range get a rear spoiler on them, you get different wheels, but I have to say, the way that this one is configured certainly doesn't hurt at all. Now, one more thing that's worth calling out while I'm standing here, and I know we're calling it a hatchback, but it's almost a notchback. If you have a look at this kind of extended rear ducktail spoiler, complete with gurney flap on there, it helps the car's aerodynamic profile, but it's actually a pretty cool, sporty look. And again, that's what people are wanting from hatchbacks these days. It is part of the car's overall aerodynamic appeal, but it just helps its general appeal as well. Now, being a hatchback that's probably going to spend most of its time running to the shops or doing the school run and all that sort of stuff, let's look at practicality because it's pretty important and it's also pretty well sorted. Now you've got a 363 litre boot on the MG4. It expands through 60/40 folding seats to 1177 litres. For context, a Corolla hybrid hatch has only a 217 litre boot, so this is much, much bigger. A Hyundai i30 is 395 litres, so it's closer to that, but basically it's a really usable size. Now it's worth calling out that you do get your handy portable charger with the MG4. Under the floor, there is no spare tyre. You do get an inflator kit and a couple of other bits and pieces, but that's part of the, I guess, the electric journey. There's no real place to put a spare tyre in a car that is this compact. The other thing of note, just while we're here, you do have 3 top tether points for child seats that go into the middle, even though, as we'll see in a second, you only do get 2 ISOFIX points. Let's jump into the back seat. Well, the back seat of the MG4. Now, let's remember, this is a compact Corolla-sized hatch. And I am a 6'3", almost 50-year-old man, and I don't bend very well, but I tell you what, you can probably see I'm actually pretty comfortable here. I've got some really good room. I've got great knee room. This seat is in my driving position, as I always say, and as you always tend to comment, it's generally a little closer to the wheel than some of you may suggest that I would need. Please feel free to add in some comments around that. But it's worth calling out that this, in the position for me, a 6'3" driver, I still have plenty of knee room here. My toe room is okay. The benefits of a ground-up electric platform like the MG4, you don't have a large transmission tunnel or whatnot in the middle of the car, but you do have to accommodate the battery packs, and it generally brings the floor up a little bit, and the gap between the bottom of the seat and the top of the floor can be a bit tight for shoes. But you know what? I'm actually okay. The rest of the accommodations back here, it is pretty simple, but it's okay. You've got a cloth seat, nice and comfy. There is one USB charge point and a little storage cubby down there. Both outside seats have ISOFIX mounting points. There's no armrest, there's no mat pockets, there are no vents. The windows do go all the way down, so it is simple, but it's all right. Anyway, we've said that a lot. I will jump up into the front and we'll go through some of the other cabin accommodations plus the technology in the MG4. Right, well, the front cabin of the MG4, again, do you know what? It's actually quite slick and modern and really inoffensive. And I think this is the thing. We are looking at a next generation car. It is a very clean and simple but modern car. So let's start with the practicality stuff. We'll continue on from where we've been because you've got 2 cup holders down here. There's a center storage tray, which we've got our keys in. You've got a little net here to put your parking tickets. You've got a center cubby here to put more stuff. There's a decent glove box here as well. A really handy phone tray on top of the floating console. And underneath you've got a USB-A, a 12-volt power and a USB-C port. But it basically means you've got a reasonable setup for day-to-day usability. You've got air vents in the center and on the side. Again, nice, relatively slick the way they've done, not over the top, but nice and simple. Now, we'll get into the technology in a second, but in front of me, I've got a 7-inch LCD driver information display. It's nice and clear, but we'll talk about that a bit more when we're on the road. And here you've got a 10.25-inch LCD touchscreen. And again, we'll go through this because like we're seeing in most modern cars, and certainly electric cars, a lot of the vehicle's functions are actually controlled from within the screen rather from other switches. So before we go too much further, let's turn the car on, which it already is. So like we've seen in the Polestar, like we've seen in Teslas, as soon as you unlock and get in, the car is activated. You don't need to hit a button or turn a key. It is the new generation of doing things, which is actually kind of handy, particularly when you're filming, because you can put your windows up and down and do all that sort of stuff without having to wonder whether you've turned the car on or not. Problem for us, not so much for you. Let's have a look at the screen because one thing to call out, again, this is a pre-production UK market car, so some of the features aren't exactly the same as we'll see in Australia. Some of them aren't configured properly, but we can go through some of the basics. The key one being device projection, which we'll go through today with Apple CarPlay. The car supports Android Auto as well, but I have an Apple phone. Now, the good thing here is that this is represented full screen. This is like we see in Audis. It's a really, really nice implementation. Now, fair call, this is the modern way of doing things. We're seeing a lot of brands using their technology in the car to run the Apple system or the Android system in a full screen takeover. But for your day-to-day driving, it means your Google Maps works full screen and looks really rich. You've got your voice assistant to text and instructions that works in a really easy to use and a really clear way. The implementation of a mobile device projection in a car like this at this price point means you don't need a complicated navigation system or funky ways to connect your phone or anything like that. You just plug it in, which I will note is through the USB-A port in this car. The USB-C is only for charging. I don't know if that'll change in Australian market cars. We'll find out. But really easy to get up and going. You've got yourself navigation, you've got streaming audio, you've got voice to text, the same as you do in any other car with Apple CarPlay. So a really nice implementation of that and a really important feature. Other things to call out in this system, because this is an electric car, obviously, you can control the elements of the electric car. Now, for a start here, you've got a charging menu here, but you've also got a discharging menu as well, which basically is for vehicle to load. So the car has a vehicle to load capability, meaning that you can use the MG4's battery to power external devices. It's really handy if you get caught short and you need to, say for example, a tree's come down over your power lines and you need to keep the fridge running, you can do it. It's great if you're working remotely. We've used cars to charge batteries while filming and do all sorts of bits and pieces. You may not use it every day, but the day you need it, it's actually a really handy thing to have. A downside is, to go on, that you also obviously have the air conditioning controls through here as well. Now, that is something that we do see in a lot of brands at the moment. We saw Volkswagen go everything through touchscreens and is now walking that back somewhat. There are shortcut buttons here on the console to turn the fans on and off, to turn on the front demister and the rear demister really easily. But as far as the rest of your climate control settings go, you're doing it through the main touchscreen interface. Now, if you're anything like me, you tend to sort of set it and forget it. 20.5 degrees, I think, is the going rate with sync, because we're all normal humans. But it is just worth knowing that the climate control settings are within the screen. Other things that we have to choose from here, and if I go into the car mode settings, back to driving, being an electric car, you've obviously got energy recovery capability in the MG4, and you can adjust that. So look, there are some drive modes. You've got snow, eco, normal, sport, and custom. You're going to leave it in normal, let's just face it. But the energy recovery setting here, this is not something, we've seen some cars use paddles to control that so you can adjust it while on the fly. Certainly from my experience, you get comfortable with a driving mode in your electric car and you tend to leave it there. So anywhere between low, medium, high, and then an adaptive energy recovery, this is the one pedal driving idea. So on high energy recovering, you'll barely need to use the brakes because the car basically uses its motors to generate friction to recover energy as you slow down. So while you're driving, you'll figure out which one you like the best and you'll tend to leave it in that setting. There is, of course, an energy saving mode as well if you are getting caught out, but the 350 kilometer odd range in this thing, if you're using it for urban shopping, trust me, you're not going to spend 350 kilometers running to the shops. You'll go nowhere near it. But so it's a usable thing. Driver assistance technology by way of the MG Pilot system. The features here, again, we haven't got them all turned on, even though they show in here because this is a pre-production car. But when the Australian ones come through, we'll be able to test all of these, both in an urban and extra urban environment. But they're all here though, right? You've got a lane departure assistance system. You've got traffic sign recognition. You've got a forward collision assist. You've got an unsteady driving warning. So I dare say that's part of the attention, driver attention, potentially saying, hey, maybe James, stay off the coffees this morning. But it is an interesting way that you've got all of these things in here at a car at this level, at this price point. You're kind of getting the full suite of stuff there. Now, worth calling out, there is a towing mode here that's basically, the car has a 500 kilogram tow rating on it. I'm not sure how many people will A, fit a tow bar and B, tow anything, but it's there if you need it. So with all that said, let's take a look at what the MG4 is like on the road, because we've said this is Australia's most affordable electric car. This is the one you've been waiting for. It's a sub $40,000 EV. It's actually a pretty complete car. We're calling it an electric Corolla to kind of help the context for many viewers and prospective buyers who just want to understand that, yes, this can fit into their day-to-day life at this level. So jump in and let's hit the road and see what it's like around town for both performance, ride and comfort, and of course, its energy usage and recovery. Now, one of the things we talk about a lot with electric cars is the change and things that you need to learn and the difference in the functionality and general driving feel. But many of them, the MG4 included, are just cars, right? You get in, you drive, you feel immediately at home. And I think that's how this really does feel straight off the bat. It is just a regular hatchback. And I think for a lot of buyers for whom a step to electric has got a number of different reasons as to why, having to relearn a car and start from the ground up is not something that a lot of people want to do. So if you are looking for a step to electric but don't want to completely throw away your entire driving knowledge and start again, the MG4 actually delivers in terms of feeling immediately like a city-friendly hatchback the very first time you get into it. So now that we've established that you can simply get in and drive an MG4, let's go through some of the basics. And first of all, visibility. We could see from the outside, it is a hatchback, but it's got quite a slopey back there. You've got that small rear window. In terms of overall visibility, it isn't that bad. If you've got passengers in the back, you'll probably obscure much of that rearward vision. I can see the 3 headrests through the rear view mirror now. So again, takes a little bit of getting used to, but you should be fine. The mirrors are a reasonable size, but what's handy is you've got these little quarter light windows here on the side that do make that immediate blind spot off the A-pillar a lot easier to deal with. And it just means that if you're coming up to an intersection, you need to look through the car, except when you have a camera pointing straight at you, it does make it a little bit easier that way. But in terms of general driving feel and driving position, do you know what? I'm just putting around town and I'm quite happy about it. So dynamically, now let's be clear, we are just in some Sydney traffic here. We are on a wholly urban look, but that's pretty much how you're going to drive one of these. So while we aren't really putting the car's full dynamic capability to the test, Rob has driven this a little bit more than I have and has given me the feedback that there are still some areas where obviously the suspension, we've just gone over a speed hump, it doesn't quite settle. You can feel some of the harder hits. But this is not designed to be the last word in automotive dynamics. Running around town, it's comfortable enough. It settles well enough. It actually manages what it is that we're doing, urban driving at less than 40 kilometers an hour really, really well. But what's probably more important is that it feels light and easy. You're not struggling with it. You're not sort of trying to handle a heavy vehicle around. It is very maneuverable. It's nice and easy to work through. If the rear view camera was set up properly, we'd be able to sort of see how it parked, but it is relatively easy to manage on an urban cycle, and that's how you're going to use this car for the majority of time anyway. And as you can see, we're quite at home. So the MG4 51 with its 50.6 kilowatt hour battery, which is the same as the one that was in the entry-level MG ZS EV as well. Now, this is, as we said in the intro, this is one of 3 battery sizes that you can get in the MG4, and I would argue that this is really all you need. The car has a claimed range of 350 kilometres, and currently we're averaging around 18.2 kilowatt hours per 100, which, given that we've been doing a bit of filming with the car, so we've been keeping things running probably when we shouldn't, it's about right. When Rob was driving, he got it around the 15 kilowatt hour per 100 kilometre mark, which isn't too bad. And it just comes down to that urban usage of using that one pedal or the energy regeneration to the best of the car's ability. So in terms of efficiency, will the MG4 be a watershed moment? Not really. It's not going to take on the likes of the Tesla Model 3 and the Hyundai Ioniq 6 in being that leader of efficiency. It's not bad, but it's not the best. And I think that's just something to be mindful of. As we see the electric technology and the battery technology evolve over time, things will start to get a bit better. We know that this car has been designed quite significantly for its aerodynamic profile. Like, it has a smooth under tray. There's a diffuser at the back. You've even got aerodynamic elements on this entry-level hatchback with the sort of extended ducktail spoiler and gurney flap that we saw, giving the car a bit more of an efficiency profile in the air. But the way that we're seeing it run, sitting between somewhere that Rob saw it around that 15 kilowatt hours per 100 and where we are today at about 18 kilowatt hours per 100, that's very acceptable. It's not the best, but it's certainly not the worst. Now, you may be saying, so far, James, this sounds like a really positive assessment of the MG4. And I'm going to tell you, it is. This is a really nice little car, and particularly for where it is positioned. I'm going to suggest that this is all the MG4 you need, but I will call out a couple of little things that we've found. Remembering too, this is a pre-production UK market car, so we will leave our full assessment for the Australian cars to land later this year. But what we're finding, yes, the ride is okay, and of course the car is quiet because it's electric and you don't get any buzz of an engine running or not. We can hear the electric motor going, but you can hear, well, it's a bit of tyre noise, a bit of booming from the suspension and the tyres working around. And I suppose it really just shows this is a car at the affordable end of the market. The sound deadening and that insulation isn't going to be as good as some of the more expensive electric cars on the market. And it's just something to point out. Around town, perfectly livable. How does it go on a multi-100-kilometre trek across coarse chip asphalt in country Australia? You know what? It's not really designed for that. If you want to go and find that out, please be my guest and let me know, because I don't think I'm going to do it. Now, of course, one of the big questions for any electric car, what's the performance like? MG claim a 0 to 100 time in this of 7.7 seconds. We're not about to test that today, but what I can tell you is it is particularly zippy. You've got 125 kilowatt power output, which is more than comparable petrol or hybrid hatchbacks, and it definitely feels zippy enough for around town. So as a good little practical city car, the MG4 51, well, it ticks a lot of boxes. Well, there you go, our first close-up look at the all-new MG4 electric hatchback. And I tell you what, we've come away pretty impressed, because not only is this a massive step up for MG as a whole, it comes back to that challenge point at the start where Australians were waiting for literally a car just like this. A Corolla-sized hatchback, fully electric, reasonable range at that crucial sub $40,000 price point. Driving it around, getting to understand it a bit more, you've got a practical boot, you've got reasonably spacious rear seats, you've got a very usable infotainment system, particularly with the device projection. You've got modern safety equipment. It rides well, it drives well, it's zippy, the range is easy, it's efficient enough. I tell you what, it's doing everything that it needed to do in this segment to become a bit of a winner, especially for first-time electric car buyers. Now, it's not perfect by any stretch. It's a little bit noisy in there, it's a little bit fiddly in there. We've had a couple of niggles happen with the car while we've had it. But I will again be clear, this is a pre-production non-Australian market car. So we will leave our final assessment for when we drive the car that you can actually buy. But on the face of this one, everything is looking pretty good for the car. But what I will also say is that this is available in up-spec models with different alloy wheels and kind of sharper body kits and leather seats and all that stuff, and you can get a 64 and a 77 kilowatt hour battery. But I'm going to say that this 51 at the sub $40,000 price point is the one you really want. At this level, the car does everything you need it to do. It is very accessible. It's mass market accessible, and I think that's the key point. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing these as half of a relatively, I guess, traditional moving forward Australian two-car family garage. You may have a double cab ute, a big SUV or a 4x4 on one side, but then having a compact, city-friendly, happy to do the shops or the school run electric hatchback on the other is where this fits in really, really well. The big story here, though, is the price point and the market for Australian EV buyers only improves every single day. So if you are waiting for the value point to hit that certain figure, you are thinking that maybe later this year or next year is the time for you, then cars like the MG4, well, they're not just right around the corner, they're here already. Now, if you enjoyed this clip and found it useful, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell icon, you know what to do. If you are shopping for an electric car and want to know more, well, up here you can see our recent 2023 Drive Car of the Year Best Electric Vehicle category, where we do look at some of the other options in the market. And of course, if there's anything more that you want to know about the MG4, both in video or written, head on over to Drive.com.au, drop us a comment below, send us an email, bang us off a tweet, all the things the kids are doing. Let us know. We are here to help you find your way into your next new car.